I'm your host, Mike Schwartz, founder of Glue, and today we're going to talk about the best ROI for a national ID. And I have three guests who are experts in national ID. First, I have Armando from Dominican Republic. Welcome, Armando.
Hi, nice to meet you. A pleasure for me to be here.
Thank you. And Kalyan from Ironworks, a vendor in India who's an expert in self-sovereign identity. Welcome, Kalyan.
Hi, Mike. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here.
And Jacques, who is a technical advisor for the government of Bhutan. Is that accurate, Jacques?
That's close enough. Hi, Mike. Hi, everybody else. Thank you for having me.
Okay. And, so this is a little bit different of a broadcast. We're going to treat it more like a panel. And I invited Kalyan because at Internet Identity Workshop, I saw a demo of the platform that they worked on for Bhutan. And I thought our Identirati architect audience would really benefit from that. So maybe we could start, Kalyan, by if you want to share the video quickly, that'll help us level set. Maybe you could talk us through it while we're viewing it.
Sure, Mike. Give me a minute to share the video. So this is, again, an example of how we can have the individual citizens onboarded, issued with a foundational ID, and then same ID can be used to get services from government, department ministries, or from the banks or other service providers. In this example, we'll quickly understand as to how an individual can get onboarded using the Bhutan NDI digital identity wallet, and then use that to get KYC done for a bank to open an account and get the information pulled from my wallet and get it pre-filled in the form, and then get a bank account being quickly issued to me after the verification, and then use the same bank account for doing something like a passwordless login. So it's a 3-minute video. Just bear with me. I'll start with the video. Yeah.
And NDI stands for National Digital Identity, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Hello everyone. Today we are going to demonstrate how the Bhutan India app simplifies the process of opening a bank account for the citizens of Bhutan. As we all know, in a country like Bhutan, even simple tasks like opening a bank account can be cumbersome. Traditionally, one would need to visit the bank and verify paper-based credentials. However, with the Bhutan India app, this can be done in just a few minutes. Here, on the right side of the screen, you can see the mobile device where we will be using the Bhutan India app. And on the left side, you can see the bank application interface. First, the user needs to onboard to the Bhutan India app by submitting their details. For this demo, I'll be using test data to enter the user details. After submitting the details, there is a second factor verification where the user needs to verify their face against existing data. As you can see, the user is prompted to perform certain actions to verify their liveness. Now, the user is shown the data that has been verified, which will be issued as the digital credential. So let me accept this and set up the app by giving a few permissions. Now we have landed on the home screen of the app where we can see the connection is being made with the RGOB organization. Subsequently, we can see that the foundational ID digital credential is getting issued and the permanent address digital credential as well. Now we need 2 more digital credentials which I will add as self-attested credentials, namely the current address and the contact number. Now let's proceed to the banking portal. After clicking on register, we can see here that the bank application is expecting the user data. So let me select this option, which is going to generate the QR code for me. As I'm scanning the QR code from the Bhutan India app, we can see that the information is now requested from the user. Let me share the requested information with the user's consent. Now we can see that the digitally verified information is populated in the application form seamlessly. Let's accept the consent and submit the application form. Now we can see that the data is processed and the digital credential is issued. Let's accept this digital credential. Here we can see that the digital credential is stored in the user's wallet. Now we will see how we can use this bank information digital credential to log into the banking portal. So upon selecting use Bhutan India, a QR code is created. Let me scan this QR code in the Bhutan India app and share the requested information. And here we are sharing the user consent by sharing the information. And we can see that the user is able to log in to perform various banking operations.
That's pretty much the demo is all about.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting. And I had a number of questions along the way. Well, let me start with a question for Jacques, just to give us some level setting. So Jacques, before something probably existed before this. What was the state of Bhutan Identity before you rolled out this new solution?
Yeah, we have a it's a paper-based system. So we call it the Citizens Identity Card. So it's a little card, almost the size of a credit card, that has an image of you and some details on, but it doesn't have a smart chip or anything like that in it. So it's literally just a paper, which is a plasticky. And you normally, when asked your identity, you would provide that, and then they would visually compare it with your face, and then they would use the CID number, the citizen number, to actually create accounts for you and open registrations and things like that. It's a very complicated system in the sense that we have many different layers of citizenship in the country. So you can be a 100% citizen, you could be a foreigner that has the right to stay in the country, so like permanent residency, or you could be, there's about 4 or 5 different levels that you could be. And so that citizen number changes length, and it's a pure numerical number. So it's pretty easy for people to understand that if you have a 4-digit number, then you're this type, or if you have a 6 or 11, you're a different type. And so it was actually a little bit discriminating for people to, when they show that to businesses or to, the government services and stuff, because people would sort of, assume that they are something because of the number. And so we wanted to do away with that. And so even the paper version that we have in the National Digital Identity, because some people don't want to carry a smartphone with them, we have a printed version as well. But it's now just a QR code, so it's not human readable anymore. So the mobile verifiers can verify it when you want to provide service or get services. But if you give it to somebody, they can't see your photo and they can't see your name and stuff on that. So it's a lot more secure. And so there is, people don't treat you differently based on what they can see, because there's nothing for them to see.
Would you say that this is a foundational ID? Because when I saw the enrollment process, I saw did you actually enter your citizen ID number there and then enroll your face?
Yeah, so actually we have a database where we've already pre-collected biometrics. So we collected facial recognition data for everybody, and then for most people, fingerprints, and then for a small part of the population, we tested other modalities. So we have palm vein, finger vein, and iris scans as well. So to just test different modalities. And so when you're on board, what you're doing is you're providing the information which is on the birth register or the voter's roll.
Mm-hmm.
And including the existing CID number that you have. And we go and collect that record, and we take the biometric information that's with it. And then we validate the information you passed, plus we do the liveness test. And if that matches the biometric, we create a foundational ID in your wallet. But there is no link from the government side to your wallet, although in your wallet we do carry the CID number. So because a lot of the government systems is set up to use CID number, it's not yet set up to use the new national digital identity. So for a period of time, we have to carry both numbers for backwards compatibility. But that system is going to be shut down within the sort of next year to year and a half. And then you'll only use the digital ID, which is in your wallet, and we'll start shutting down the databases which are on the government. So we have a National Digital Identity Act. And what that does is it says that we can't have these huge centralized databases. And what we do is, as we modify each of the departmental systems, we'll take their access to the API to that massive database away, which means they can no longer, interrogate that database for lots and lots of information. They have to come to you and ask you for information out of your wallet.
I see. So it sounds like you were coming from a pretty good place, though, because you already had all of your citizens registered. They all had a number, a numerical identifier, and you had biometrics. So you were coming from a pretty good place. And then you layered the mobile credential on top of this.
No, the legacy system. Everybody doesn't have the legacy system. So the birth registration process is quite disconnected. So when you are born in Bhutan, you have 3 days for your parents to, as a baby, take you to your local monk, and then the monk will determine what your names are, and they will issue you with a certain set of names, and then the parents have to go and register you. But a lot of the rural people don't have access to the registration facilities near to them, so a lot of them will just not register them. And when the kids have to go to school, they don't have registration papers and stuff, so they then try to catch up. And so a lot of people's birth dates are wrong, and a lot of people don't have the right birth certificates and that sort of stuff. So it was okay for the working population, but if you fell outside of that working population where you had to have an ID, it was very hit and miss.
So Armando, how is that compared to Dominican Republic in terms of like where you're at right now?
Actually, it's very similar to how we handle ID here. For example, we have a central authority that issues a registration number to each citizen, and that document, which is a physical one, is being used for everything. What at the government level we've been trying to do for a very long time is how we can construct this first layer that can help us out to validate who is who in order to provide them certain services. So we kind of built a single sign-on solution for public services that it's actually being rolled out from the past year until now, until we can figure out other pieces of the puzzle. Because, for example, this registration authority is not part of the government, and it complicates a few things regarding the use of biometric services, for example. So we kind of have to figure out a solution for that using some clever aspects of it, using some certain proof of life validation aspects for that single sign-on platform. But in what we consider integral solutions, such as the one you have done, there are other aspects that we need to consider for the down the line, especially when it comes to data governance, which is one Achilles heel that we have here in this country. And the other part is how centralized are registries across government institutions. And providing a sovereign digital ID solution might be a solution for that, but we still don't. We still haven't figured out the best way how to implement that in a proper way. So we are on that. We're on that part, and I expect that the authorities will figure out something soon.
So let me recap. So just make sure I understood. So you have a paper identifier issued to everyone. Does everyone register? Do you have any challenges around births where people don't register, or everyone gets registered at birth?
I mean, yeah. I mean, there are some people that are still haven't that are not registered yet. Especially in the rural parts of the country. But most of the people, as soon as they're born, there are officials at the hospitals that are doing the registering for the families. However, we have a data quality issue with the data registry as well, because it's not necessarily quality data, because before 2022 2023 everything was handwritten. The law mandated that when a person was born, you had to handwrite down their name into certain ledgers, and that you have to make 2 copies of that ledgers as well. And that is of course prone to commit many mistakes regarding the names, regarding the surnames, the date of birth, and everything. So people had to spend a lot of time trying to correct these things in order for them to have their identification data right, to put it simply. So when that information was transcribed into a database, and then the physical cards were given out to people. So but right now, with the current law, everything is going to be digitalized from 2023 on, and after that, you can build any kind of services. Right now, the Central Authority Board is actually in the process of of defining which will be the foundational ID system to govern everything, while at the government level, like I said, we have built this single sign-on solution for public services, while we address any other aspects pertaining to that. And then, of course, we have certain issues that we need to figure out. For example, how we can integrate digital signatures into this, how we can define better data protection rules in order to prevent misuse of personal information from certain actors that have access to these ID services that are being provided, and other authentication solutions that they may have. And also how we can make compatible having multiple digital IDs or personas into a single profile for the citizen. It's something that it's also it needs to be worked out and defined. We also have certain constraints by law that prevents having a proper digital ID solution in the country, but it's something that I expect in the next years will be figured out and be tackled upon.
Okay, so some issues with data quality around birth, but then eventually you get issued an ID, and then you go register online to get the federated ID.
Yep.
And but are there any issues with duplicate registrations or registrations that maybe don't correlate to an actual ID? Like how's the data quality in the federated single sign-on system?
Well, in that case, since the user provides most information, we do some sort of validation with the data that is on the civil registry, and we compare with what is the official data by current standards. And that's the data we use because it's like I said, it's the official one. So we cannot reinvent the wheel on that front. However, when the user registers, they can fill some of the blanks that the data register, the civil register doesn't currently have, and then we can construct one or another digital ID, to put it that way. But it's not necessarily the same, and with the same information that is on the civil registry or other registries that the person might have regarding personal info.
Colleen, I'm gonna hassle you a little bit about one thing I saw in the video. I saw a lot of QR code scanning, and I remember a discussion with a Microsoft engineer who mentioned that. Colleen, are you frozen? Actually, it looks like Colleen's frozen. Uh-oh, Colleen's gone. Well, okay, Jock, I'll ask you this question because I'm sure you probably got some feedback on this too. So scanning a QR code, Microsoft did a study, and they found that when they presented a QR code, that they had a huge drop off in participation. Like it was like a 50% drop off. Like when people got to the QR code. And actually, QR code is, when I saw a demo recently of Microsoft and Apple showing verifiable credential presentation, they were also using the QR code as the mechanism. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that. Has that been an issue for people?
No, because people in Bhutan are very used to using QR codes. So we don't have the sort of credit cards with the smart chips and stuff like most other countries. So you can't tap and go or Apple Pay when you're in a shop. So in shops, the shopkeeper just has a QR code with their bank account, and I scan it with my bank app, and the money gets transferred directly from my bank to his bank with no intermediary charges. And we something like over 70% of our financial transactions at the moment are being done through the QR code system. So most of the people in Bhutan are very familiar with using QR codes.
Okay. Yeah, and I would think that by today, but you're talking about the whole population. So obviously there's a broad range of technical capabilities. What was the feedback from the rollout of this? Were there any technical problems or conceptual problems of just people understanding like what this credential is?
Yeah, absolutely. We spend nearly equal amounts of time through education, and we actually have a group of people called the Desuks, and they go from house to house to actually help the people on board, show them how the app works, explain the benefits and how to use it and things like that. So because we still have quite a large uneducated population, and we also have a large population which don't have smart devices. So we also developed a version that runs on KaiOS, where you have a smart device that runs, our wallet and WhatsApp and Facebook and that sort of stuff. And the device is like $30 outright. So it's a very cheap device. And we built a paper version of the digital identity. So people like the farmers who live high up in the mountains where there's no coverage, they can carry around the paper version of the digital identity and then use it at certain kiosks when they get into villages. So we do spend a lot of time making sure that we spend time on inclusivity. So the first rollout, of course, targeted the what we call working population, which are the people that are in the cities, have a smartphone. And then so as we expand, we add more versions or variants of the wallet that makes it more accessible to other people. And we also have a controller wallet for parents to control their children's wallets. And we have a custodian wallet. So if you legally become the custodian or guardian of a person, then you can use that wallet to drive their wallet. So there are many different versions of this to try and make sure that everybody can have an identity, irrespective of their financial position or their education level or their physical ability.
Right. Kalyan, maybe I could ask you a question about on the technology side. So this app, if you told Americans that we're going to issue you an America app and you're going to carry this thing around, I think there'd be a lot of resistance to that. Is the government tracking me? What other information is the government collecting? Maybe could you talk? Does the design of the app protect the privacy of the user? I'm talking about the app itself, not the presentation of the credential, which could be potentially correlated.
Sure. I mean, that's a good question, Mike. I mean, so the very reason why Bhutan as a country moved to bring the NDI Act in first place was to have a buy-in from the government on that part, so that the act itself brings a lot of seriousness and more like adherence and binding to the legal forms of the data sharing and all that. So this app is designed in such a way that it by default ring fences all the personal data of the individuals, right from, I can tell you, if I go one level deeper as to how the services are integrated from the back end to how the data is being pulled and everything is ring fenced, so much so that even a single log that we put in the system does not capture any of the data of the individual at all, period. So it's very privacy preserving. It might sound a little tough, but Jack can add to that as to this solution. This implementation is actually a good example of how it follows the 10 SSI principles when it comes to privacy of the data of the individuals rather.
Can you tell us a little bit, where does the Credible platform, because Ironworks has spent years developing this amazing platform for SSI, how does the Credible platform sort of fit into this solution?
Sure. The core integration is with the Credible platform. And what we have done is on top of the Credible platform, we have built the business layer for the Bhutan NDI. So Credible sits at the bottom of the implementation, which follows all the W3C standards. Then on top of there is an interface which is specifically the NDI ecosystem. And then on the app side, we have the Bhutan NDI app, which is again interface layer for the users. And then there is a SDK, which is integrated within it, which is the RFCs from the W3C standards. That's how the implementation is.
I see. Well, maybe we should pivot back to some of the privacy aspects. So Jacques, this is one of the first national rollouts of a verifiable credential infrastructure that I've seen. What were some of the reasons that you decided that this would be a good fit for your requirements, or why were you so thinking ahead of the curve here?
Actually, it came down from a direction His Majesty the King wanted us to have. So in one of his national addresses to the population, he specifically spoke about the digital transformation and that we have to go through to go towards a digital economy to really boost the economy of Bhutan. And one of those things, because Bhutan isn't a really big resources-rich country, so we don't have really big manufacturing or any of those sort of industries. But we can actually do a lot in tech. And so the idea was that we should create an identity that we can use in the Web3 environment and things. And so as we started talking about those things, we happened to mention SSI and the benefits of SSI. And His Majesty was really engaged in the fact that this would give the control of the data back to each individual person. And so from there, the idea just grew, and we built a H wallet version of it, and then obviously all the other different versions for it. But it originally came from His Majesty's vision. He wanted to have a state-of-the-art identity, and he was on a trip through Europe and through the Americas, and so he met some people who obviously were working on the IDAS and with Canada, some of the Canada people, like the people working on the standard there from Tomboma's office, and we also met one of the border people from the US. And they were all going down the path of SSI and SSI principles for some of their tech. And so that's how we made the decision. And from that point on, sort of for the last 2.5 years, we've been working on this platform.
How many citizens today currently have this credential?
So we launched it in October last year, and we've just passed the 200,000 mark. So 200,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but we only have a working population of just under 300,000 people.
Yeah.
And we have a total citizenship at the moment, so that it was issued a couple of weeks ago, 680,000 people. So being just over 200,000 in less than the first year, I think is a good uptake.
It's about a third. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's an opt-in, right? It's not an opt-out. So it's an opt-in. It's a voluntary take-up.
Well, I should pivot towards the actual title of our. Let me show our title again of our talk, which is about return on investment. So I think we have a good basic understanding, sort of what you guys did. Not very deep, but basic. And when you're justifying this investment, what did you see as potentially giving you the highest ROI? Because the identity itself is not really useful until you use it. So you don't get an ROI until you actually present it and use it to do something.
So the very interesting thing is what's kind of unique about this project. There's two things you'd expect in a project that we never had. The one was a date for implementation. We always agreed when we had enough services on the platform that we think adoption would naturally occur, then we would go live. So that was the first interesting thing. And then the second thing, we were never asked to present an ROI. It was never about a return on investment. So we actually publish every month how much money we spend in building the platform, how many people are working on it. So we're very open about all these things. But we were never asked to actually give a return on investment. And in fact, the wallet is free. And even the backup and restore facilities where we store, if you want us to keep a encrypted version of your wallet, that's free. So the whole service is given to free for the government. Now, that we just created a company called the Bhutan NDI Company, and of course it has to be sustainable. So up until now, we had 100% investment from DHI, which is the company that's been tasked with building this. And then we have funding for another 1.5 years. And then from that point on, it has to become self-sufficient. So at the moment, we're working with Kalyan and his team and some other partners in a consortium to actually resell the platform to other countries. So we will eventually make money for the platform from that. But it's always only about being sustainable in the company where we develop it. We don't actually have to prove a profit or anything like that.
Interesting. So I was actually not thinking about that type of ROI. I was thinking about Singapore in particular. Singapore has done a great job implementing a system called SingPass, which is a federated system based on OpenID. So it doesn't have some of the privacy protections that a self-sovereign identity system would. But one of the things that I think they've done a really good job at is going out to relying parties and getting them to accept SingPass. So I think it's the largest current national federation with over 200 relying parties, from banks to even companies that are using it to onboard employees or for company IDs to get a telephone. So they've just done a great job getting adoption by service providers. And I think that has really, I don't know that I don't know the numbers, but it seems to me like they have the highest ROI because they've just gotten the credential itself can be used in so many places that it's really valuable. Now, I don't know how it's funded. I think the Singapore government funds it, so it doesn't bother me that they are not making the money back. But as a net benefit to citizens, it seems like the citizens are getting a great investment on that on their government's investment. So
Yes,
what are you thinking in terms of RP adoption? Yeah.
Yeah. So at the moment, we only have 2 telco companies in the country, and both of them are integrated. We have 5 banks. 2 of them already integrated. The other 3 are in the pipeline to be integrated this year. So we have both government and private companies that are on the platform. The National University is integrated, the Gelsong service, the DESUP service. So so by the end of this year, all the government to citizen services will be single sign-on with the NDI platform. Some of the services are already the only way you can access the service, like paying your property tax. You can only get into the property tax system if you use the NDI application. And so the idea is that obviously we want to integrate as many of the companies and stuff as we can. So integrating with like the private banks and stuff is free. So we provide the service free for them. They don't have to pay to actually be onboarded onto the platform. And so we're trying to make it as easy and as cheap for people to actually be on the platform and benefit from being in the ecosystem, because you'll have better data, you'll have trusted data. For some of the companies like the bank, they have people employed just to fill in forms. And so those people can be redeployed into other parts of the bank and help the bank grow and stuff like that. So we spend a lot of time in that sort of stuff. So return on investment from that perspective is at the moment we have 14 unique VCs in our wallet that you can get. And we have just over 100 already designed for some of the other integrations that are in the pipeline over the next 12 months.
Interesting. So Armando, I'm wondering I know you're still in the process of rolling out your digital and perfecting it, but what do you see as the most interesting of the consumers of the identity in your ecosystem?
Well, in that case, let's say one thing. We're still in the very process of defining which will be the outcomes from that, and I cannot like give you a certain answer, a direct answer to that question. But in a way, I think it's going to be a very successful experiment when we actually define, when the Central Electoral Board actually get on board with this, and they get rolling out the foundational ID system, and then how other government institutions as well try to build use cases that actually confirms that. But overall, I think it's going to be as positive as the case of Bhutan.
Well, Kalian, I'll put you in the hot seat for a second. When your Jock mentioned that there's planning 100 different types of credentials. That's something that I hadn't heard before, that there'd be so many variety of credentials. Can you talk a little bit about what these credentials are and what's the advantage of having so many of them?
So, I mean, basically, when Jock referred to these credentials, he's mainly talking about various departments, ministries, and correct me, Jock, I'm not accurate on that, wherein these services will be integrated with the platform, so that the citizens eventually have one single, platform for the services we cater to. So, probably I might not be accurate in quoting these departments. A recent example was the property tax filing website with the portal which was being used was integrated with the national ID, wherein the citizens were able to verify themselves and file in their property tax bills in a very seamless manner. So if you look at it from ROI point of view, right, the adoption is going to be kicked off when we integrate all these services from all the departments, ministries, and the public service commissions, so that there is a better user experience for the individuals. So the Bank of Bhutan, Bhutan Telecom, then the Royal University of Bhutan, these are some examples wherein the integrations are happening. And even if you take one of these services, they will have at least 10 to 15 of different types of credentials being issued to the citizens rather.
Oh, so you're saying that maybe a university, if I use my NDI credential to attend a university, then the university might issue me a credential back saying, am I on the right track?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And
Yeah.
each of the employers issue an employee VC. And
Okay.
so depending on in what industry you work, so for instance, if you're an engineer, you'll get an employee VC that says, hey, I'm Jacques, I'm a electrical engineer. And then if you work for BBC, which is our electricity company, they might issue you a credential that says you have a ticket to work on high voltage lines, or you have a ticket to work on low voltage lines. So a lot of these mining, electricity, and those sort of places, they have to issue you individual tickets for your skills to be able to operate or work in a particular area. And so that's what makes the number. So at last look a week or so ago, we have well over 100 use cases that's still in the pipeline to be developed. And that's what's creating all these different verifiable credentials. Our philosophy is that your wallet will become the single source of truth about you. And so every bit of information that should exist for somebody to develop a service, you should be in control of, and it should be in your wallet.
How is Singapore did a presentation at a conference I was at recently about the challenges of onboarding the service providers. And they've worked really hard. They said some of the service providers approach them and they really don't know a lot about digital identity. And they sort of coach them on how to use OpenID, and they have to educate them quite a bit in order to get them to use the national ID system. And they've done a lot of work on outreach. How's the experience been onboarding different departments of the government or businesses on this technology? And what have you learned along the way about better ways to maybe improve that onboarding process?
Yeah. So the first thing we did is we realized we couldn't possibly do it on our own because we have a very small team. Our team is very rarely above about 15 people, and half those are non-technical people. So we created a workshop. We invited all the IT companies in Bhutan. At that point, there was only 16 of them. And we brought them into a workshop, and we spent most of a day with them actually teaching them what the platform looks like, how to integrate with it, how to then design services for the platform. And so both for us, for private sector and for public sector, for the government, these companies are actually doing the work. And then we've also run some hackathons where we invited students and other companies and actually people outside of Bhutan to come up with new innovative ways to use the NDI platform. And there were some really interesting ideas and stuff that we're going to follow up that came out of the hackathon. So it's quite easy, actually, after we taught them how to do it. So that's what's creating the momentum. Yeah.
Armando, how about NDR? Do you see any challenges with rolling out the system to the actual consumers of identity, the businesses and the government departments?
Yes, actually, the first one is, like I said, is more of a legal and political aspect of it, challenge, to put it simply, because there are certain limitations that the law has regarding the use of the information registries for authentication and for ID systems. So basically, the Central Electoral Board is trying to centralize all kinds of personal information registry pertaining to identity into their system, so that more or less complicates the way that the information should be used for digital identity purposes. That's one. The second part is, of course, it's more of a cultural aspect of it, because, for example, regarding the use of digital signatures and many of the things that are contained, for example, in the EIDAS regulation, even though most of them are legal. The use and recognition by certain authorities and private sectors and even the judiciary can be a challenge, because some judges, for example, can recognize a valid digital signature, but others don't. And there are other institutions that actually have that certain issue. And the third one is, of course, a more of a cultural challenge, because even though we've been advancing and making strides regarding the use of digital services and for many things of our lives, there are many people that still resist on the use of digital instruments for the day to day. So they prefer doing things offline. For example, in the financial sector, there are many people that still that prefer going to a bank branch to get some services from the banks and to do all the many financial transactions, because they don't trust the electronic channels, the digital channels for that. So it's something that it's going to take some time before we can solve those issues for us to actually move towards a digital ID system that provides services to all.
Accessibility is always a big
Yep.
concern. Um, but what would you say? What are some of the biggest challenges that you're trying to solve right now in Dominican Republic with regard to
Uh,
this rollout? I know government bureaucry is always there, but
yeah.
that aside, what are some of the biggest technical challenges?
Well, there are many government institutions. For example, the central bank is trying to figure out how to digitalize most of the banking services that are being provided toward the citizenship. They have established this digital finance hub that is innovation hub, to put it simply, that is trying to work with the banks and with the broader fintech sector in order to move the population forward towards that. And there's also trying to work with the onboarding services and other know your customers digital ID provision services in order to validate who is who and to have a better due diligence that is completely digital and doesn't provide any friction towards the use of digital services. That's for example. There are other cases, for example, what the government has been trying to do with this single sign-on system to provide services, to provide authentication services for public services provision on the internet. And that's making some strides. For example, the National Service Portal, for example, has that rollout. There are other portals that actually running out this single sign-on function for administration. And in our case, for example, we're exploring to create a single sign-on for government officials for the provision of certain services that we at the ministry provides, for example. And that's something that, well, of course, we will need to be tied to a more broader digital ID system that actually leverages on all these data registries in order to have these sort of profiles for each user, for each scenario regarding the provision of digital ID services. So yeah.
Do you see authorization as one of the challenges you're facing? So after authentication, centrally managing permissions, what people are allowed to see or do?
Not at this moment. I think the main issue is accessibility, of course, and the second one is the political aspects of how to get this right from the very beginning.
Well, we're actually we have a lot of questions on the chat, and I have to say to the audience that it's really hard for me to listen to the guests and read the chat questions. So what I'd encourage everyone to do is let's continue the conversation on the meeting um, webpage itself on LinkedIn. Let's address these questions, and it'll give us more time to think about them and respond. Because there are some really good questions and points. So I want to encourage everybody to keep the conversation going. And let's switch to you can see we have a lot of chat here. I want to thank our guests. We try and keep these things to 45 minutes because I feel like no one wants to listen more than 45 minutes to a live stream. And we really just scratched the surface today. But hopefully we can, I would like to see more episodes like this on national digital infrastructure and identity in particular, of course, because I think that this is the key infrastructure for governments to hang the rest of their digital public infrastructure off of. So I think we need to have additional follow-up sessions on this. Hopefully we'll have a lot more in the rest of the year. So let me do the round of thank yous. Thank you, Armando, for joining us. Thank you, Kalyan. Good luck with Ironworks and keep up the great work. And thank you, Jacques, so much for sharing all that information. It's very impressive. I had a bunch more questions to ask you, but I'll have to ask you online, including SSO, which you didn't mention, but I'll have to bring that question onto the chat. And thank you, audience, for joining us. And we'll see you next Thursday. I know it's Identiverse week this week. A lot of people are at the Identiverse conference in Las Vegas. Everyone have fun. We're continuing on schedule here at Identity Office Hours, and next Thursday we're going to have an episode on continuous authorization, not continuous authentication, but continuous authorization, because authentication is just one type of policy. So thank you all, and we'll see you